Welcome to the Chats Over Coffee with My Yoga Teacher podcast with me, the comedian Peter Brush, and his yoga teacher, Yoga McLogug. That's not her name. Kayla McCormack, that's it. I'm not even going to bother re-recording that. Thanks for coming back if you've listened before, and hello, if this is the first time, you're probably thinking it's very unprofessional. Don't forget to subscribe and all that business. I'll probably nudge you again in the end. Here's today's show. I had to pull an Edinburgh show once because no one turned up. You'd still do it if two people turned up, but if no one turns up, there's no point in you doing it, is it?
Oh, I've taught yoga classes where nobody. Well, I mean, I've not taught them obviously because no one was there. But I mean, I've gone to teach yoga classes where nobody turns up.
In real life.
Yeah, in real life. Yeah, like you're saying, it's just one of those things. Especially if you just do something like at a community center, which is really common. To rent a room or a space somewhere and then just advertise it out on your Facebook and Instagram and hope someone turns up. That's quite common for teachers to teach like that. But if you don't have anywhere to start, if you don't actually have any clients or you don't have any friends that are going to turn up, it's likely that there won't be anyone there. So it sounds a bit sad, but it takes time to grow it. So we've all been there. I usually do about 10-20 minutes of yoga for myself.
You don't do the talking though, as if you're teaching a class.
No, I just play around on the mat for a little bit and then I'll leave usually.
People don't think that you're doing yoga for ghosts or something.
What do you mean you can't see them?
They're probably quite flexible, aren't they? So
you ain't got no bones, so.
I had a haircut the other week and it's just about settling down now to being...
Did you say she cut it too short?
Yeah, she's got too excited. She's been out of practice, so she's just really, really, scissor happy, I think. And what I don't like is I get a haircut and then it's shorter, and then most people I know, people in my, I'm not seeing my family and that, but traditionally, if I would see them, they're a bit more conservative about having long hair as a man, I think. And so they always would say, "Oh, you look much better. You look much better. He looks much better." And it's the opposite opinion to me. When I'm like, "No, it needs to grow. You need a few weeks for it to readjust and the curls to rebounce and stuff." So it makes me sound vain, that doesn't it? But
that's kind of why I stopped cutting or having my hair cut, because they always take too much. But I think there's this idea that you're supposed to cut so much off. So even if I say only take a little bit, they always take loads. And I'm like, So when I was about 17, I stopped cutting my hair.
So you haven't cut it for a long, long time. This is long, isn't it?
If I stand up straight, it comes down to the back of my knees.
But you are short, so...
Hey! I am short.
But that's just because you can't be bothered. It's not some, I thought, from the outside it could be some mystical hippie shit, Well,
I do quite like the idea of long hair in general. I think it's some Native American beliefs were based on, because they tend to have long hair, but they had an idea that a part of you goes into your hair, so they don't cut it. And cutting your hair is a sign of something, something's gone wrong or something like that. But they feel like your memories are in your hair, or not physically. Obviously, I don't think they really thought that physically, but they kind of felt like it was a part of you, and you shouldn't just chop it off and get rid of it or whatever. It had meaning and stuff. So I think it's because I think this idea of when my hair was this long, maybe this happened to me. When it was this long, maybe this happened to me. And in a sense, your hair holds memories in a way.
Like tree rings.
Yeah. like something like that.
If you believe that you've memories and stuff is in your hair, it must be even worse to go bald then if you've believed stuff like that.
Oh no. It's all gone.
Obviously it's compatible with age, so I guess that kind of makes sense in some ways. Do they think that elderly people that don't go bald keep their memories, or maybe maybe deduction perhaps?
Maybe.
Alright. Enough about hair. So the next of the yamas is called... I can't remember what it's called, but I know it's about.
It's called Asteya.
Okay, and that means non-stealing, right?
Yes, yeah. It's usually translated as non-stealing.
Because usually you would explain what it was. So I've actually even just stolen your intro there, and I really you should. Right,
You've taken it.
I've already failed, but yeah. So, but no, I would have guessed that has various interpretations and meanings.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been a while since you've done that class, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think I did it. I skipped one of them. Not skipped, I just didn't happen to do it because of time, and I can't remember which one I didn't do. But again, I would have forgotten anyway. So how can you do a physical practice that's related to not stealing?
Yeah. That's what I wanted to focus on in that week's yoga focus class, was trying to take these philosophies and apply them on the mat, because I think that's a little bit unique. I think a lot of people tend to take the yoga philosophies and, tell you how to, in a sense, tell you how to use it in your life, which is very good, very applicable. But I do think it can be very hard for people that if they go to a class and then you're like, don't steal. They're like, oh, come on. I don't steal. Most people aren't burglars, I think that's few and far between. And if you've showed up for a yoga class, you're likely not a burglar.
Unless you didn't pay.
Yeah, unless you just turned up and be like, oh yeah, I'll pay after class, and then you skedaddle quickly. But also I think it's a bit like, it's kind of the idea of why you would want to steal in the first place, which is that coming from a place of lacking, of that you don't have something, or that you need something that you don't have, rather than a place of abundance. You can go too far with the physical, because obviously, if people are actually literally starving, you can justify theft and things like that. There's a lot of philosophical talks around theft in general of actual property, in terms of when would be okay and when wouldn't, but not talking about that kind of thing, just talking about you and your own personal relationship with yourself. One of the things that I like to say is when you're not honest with yourself, you're taking something away from yourself. So if you come onto your mat and you push and push and push, and then in the end you hurt yourself, in a sense you've taken something from yourself, because you'll either have to rest to get better, or maybe you have caused some damage that will take a while to heal even if you don't rest. You basically have taken something from yourself, and it could just be time, or it could be your yoga practice if you push too hard and then you have to take a week off because everything hurts.
And if you've paid in advance, that's money as well. So.
Exactly. I just think that, I don't know, there's this idea that we can take from ourselves if we don't pay attention to what we're doing, if we're not honest with ourselves. And also, there's a form of gratitude as well. I think sometimes when we come up onto the mat, we're like, yes, I'm going to do my plank for 3 minutes this week. I don't know, whatever goal you wanted to have for yourself. And then you get onto the mat and you're like, oh, actually, I think I've pinched something in my shoulder and I've held this for 2 seconds and it really hurts. And you have to stop or it's going to hurt more. And then you think I've not done my goal, but that's okay, because your goal isn't necessarily to be somewhere physical. You want to have your goal to be something that is ever-changing and flexible, and to be honest with yourself. But, again, like I was saying, you lose that sense of gratitude for your body when it doesn't do exactly what you want to or expect it to do. And yoga teaches us to let go of those physical expectations and just experience how we feel right now, with no expectation, with no judgment. Just sit down, start your yoga practice, and see how it goes.
I don't know if it's related, but you don't always think of time as being something that's stolen from you as much as stuff that you can tangibly sort of... For example, when I used to drive to south of Humberside, instead of going over the Humber Bridge, I'd drive through Scunthorpe, because it saved £1.50. And I told one of the other acts that they said, oh, did you go over the Humber Bridge? And I said, oh, no, I went through Scunthorpe because it saved me £1.50. And he was like, well, that would have taken you an extra half hour. Don't you value your time? And I was like, oh, yeah, I do value my time, actually. So now I do the bridge.
I mean, there's that phrase that people say, time is money. But I think the better way to think about it is the other way around. And money is time. So every amount of money equals an amount of time that you've either worked or have done something to receive that money. So every amount of money equals time. So yeah, absolutely. You have to value your time based on, not necessarily what you're worth. We're all priceless, but, but And there's also things like, which is less applicable when we do classes online, but here in England, things are opening up from Monday. All the studios that I'm familiar with in this area have all posted their class schedules. I'm not planning on teaching any classes in person just yet, just to let you know.
Not because they didn't ask you, but just...
No!
No. I'm not happening to play any of the good comedy clubs at the moment, just for a personal choice,
Yeah, no. But there's a potential to take away from the atmosphere and the class if you attend a class and, certain things happen. So like if you attend a class and you're quite late, I'm not saying we all have had one of those days we've turned up to class super late and we're just like, I'm so sorry. And you just kind of like, should I just leave? I don't know. And then you just go, and then by the end of class, it's fine. We all have those things happen every now and then. It's not a problem. But if you're one of these people that are like always late, always 5 minutes late for class, and always, especially in person, it's very disruptive at the beginning of class to have someone come into a class and set themselves up and lay out their mat and try and sit down. Well, you're all just sat there trying to focus or something. So that in a sense is stealing from the other people in the class, because you're taking away their experience and their time in a sense. And that can be done in other ways as well.
That feels like talking at the cinema or something.
Yeah.
We had to go and watch an Inspector Calls at school, like in the theatre in London. I think most people I know seem to have studied that growing up, but you might not have done because you didn't grow up here. It's a J.B. Priestley play. It's about, how capitalism is bad, I think.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, but they were selling sweets in the foyer, so I bought some sweets, but then every time I tried to eat one, I get told off because it would make a noise.
A loud noise, yeah.
I was only a kid, but I was just like, why are they selling sweets?
If they're too noisy to eat.
Yeah, they should sell quieter sweets, not, I don't know what constitutes a quieter sweet. But
sweets in a tub rather than in a plastic bag?
Yeah, in like a foam, it should have a foam thing that they come in, and there should be foamy sweets, and so basically just marshmallows in a big bowl that's made out of marshmallow or something. That's what they should do, yeah. If you go into the theatre, that's the only sweets.
An edible marshmallow bowl with marshmallows in it.
Yeah, that's what you should sell at the theatre. And like, it's the same thing, isn't it? People just sort of taking away from your sort of...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So stealing is an abstract concept, isn't it, really? Or because you don't think it's not just a material thing, is it? It's
I mean, obviously, if for some reason they always show like, I don't know, teenagers taking things and stuff, 5-finger discount, because the thrill of it or something. If you do have a problem with stealing, then that is an okay thing to try and figure out and fix or whatever. But in general, most people don't have that problem. So it's a very funny one to try and talk about in a class.
I used to live with a kleptomaniac, though. And I didn't know that he was before I moved in. Like, the other guy I was moving in knew him. And he was reformed and everything, but I didn't find out till afterwards. I was like, oh, well, thanks for telling me now. But he was fine. It wasn't a problem. But I always feel like it's like, I don't know, you can normalise theft, can't you, in some ways, can't you? It's like tax, like people that don't pay their tax. It's just like if someone says to you, oh, well, there's a way around it, then it's quite, and then it's, I don't know, that's like a gateway into it. It's like the cannabis of theft, isn't it? Because you don't see the actual... You're not actually going into the Inland Revenue and nicking a load of money with a gun, are you? So it's quite different to like actually robbing someone in person.
And I feel like people justify it because they're like, oh, but it's my money. I earned it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not give it away.
Yeah, there's also got that to it as well. But
so they justify it.
What I mean is just that if you can commit what is almost the same crime as if you robbed a bank in person, but if you do it, a different way where you're not confronted by it, you don't see the shock on someone's face as you hold a gun to them or something like that. It's it's easier to do, isn't it? So also, if you steal like one time, you can start stealing more then, can't you? Because you can become a normal thing that you did it once, so it's like a first murder, isn't it? So
I don't know about that.
Okay.
Have you?
But that's what they say. The first murder's the hard one, isn't it? And then after that, it's like, you're okay. You've broken the not taboo, but there's
whatever barrier you would.
Yeah, this is an example that actually is a better one. It's like if you drop a bomb on a load of people from a plane, you probably kill more people than you would have if you'd have, like, in hand-to-hand combat shot someone. But what is more, like, what makes more of a psychological impact on you? It's the one where you see the person's face, isn't it? If you have the distance between you, it's almost, even though you cause enormous, much more destruction and death by dropping a bomb, but you don't, it's just, it's easy comparatively, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's a good analogy for theft in general. You can take things that it's not so straightforward or clear cut. It's not just like, I go to the store, I take this food, I don't pay for it. It's not like that. It can be a lot more like when we're talking about our time and other people's time, and there's also things like when people say they'll do something and then last minute cancel, and they never planned to do it in the first place, but they didn't want to tell you. And
so basically what we're saying is that there are so many thieves out there. Time thieves.
Everyone. I was going to say, I think something else that kind of stands out as well is this idea of not just taking away, like I was saying, in a physical sense, when you come to your mat, maybe you overdo it or something like that. But also, if you push yourself too far in your life and you don't take that time to rest, constantly taking away from your energy levels and stuff, and you don't ever just stop and rest. However you feel like, maybe that's a bubble bath or whatever. But, taking time for yourself to make sure you've had a chance to process everything that's going on in your life and sit with it or whatever. That's also a form of kind of taking from yourself, not resting.
Why do they come up with these things? Like,
You lost me.
This bloke that comes up with these limbs, right? Was it
Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, yes.
Why did he set these rules down? Because I'm thinking about, like, how there's, like, rules in Christianity and like, or like the Ten Commandments and stuff. And then retrospectively, people say things like, there was a really good bit that Chris Rock used to do where he would talk about how being kosher was basically people's way of saying we need to enshrine into law that you can't eat certain foods that are higher risk, because if you eat pork or shellfish or something, it's higher risk than other meats, I think. And so that's why it was set down into law that you can't eat them. It wasn't because there's like an unholy aspect to them or something. So that's why the religious law of being kosher came into being. But it's obsolete now because we have refrigerators. He did a bit about why God should just say, look, now we've got fridges, you can eat what you want. So a lot of the ideas of like political ideas, I think, of like, I don't know, like in a Hobbesian sense of, like, you know anything about Hobbes?
Probably not.
He writes about, like, the origin of the state. I think he wrote a book called Leviathan, which is kind of about how you give your power to the state to kind of look after you. And I guess it's just like when tribes became bigger, and like the Leviathan is the monster that, like, is in charge of everyone. So everyone's given the power to them as a supreme ruler, or being like a king would be, or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you looked at it, like, all these religious rules are kind of similar to those political, like, rules, and whether society kind of adopts them because they don't kill people because obviously it's bad for the society in general. Don't lie to other people because it's bad for the society. So has this Patanjali chap, like, because they're obviously like, it's do you do these things to be a good person, or do you do these things because it's better for the society that you're in to have harmony, or are they mutually exclusive? Does that make sense?
I suppose it depends on how you look at it. So yes, if you follow the Ten Commandments and try and follow the Yoga Sutras, or just in general the Vedas or whatever, go down the Hindi route, that kind of thing, they're they're set out in a way that, yeah, like you said, would be very beneficial to society if everybody doesn't kill anyone, if everybody doesn't steal, doesn't lie. It's a utopia world almost, isn't it? You know, but that might not necessarily be the only reason. There are meditative exercises, you might want to call them, in different Buddhism traditions and things, where you say you want to take on someone's pain. And in doing so, like, truly accept that you're going to take it from them. It's a mental thing. It's like a meditation. And if you're in with that mindset, you become a little bit of a better person. But deep down, to some extent, we might all know that no matter how much we practice that kind of thing, no matter how good you want to be, no matter how much you want to love or become a bodhisattva or whatever, in the end, it's kind of all about you. Like, you do that meditation, the selflessness or whatever, to offer or give or really truly want them to have peace and no suffering. But in the end, your wish is not necessarily going to make that happen, but it does make you feel calmer and more at peace, and perhaps that will end up making you feel better. So it kind of sounds a bit selfish when you put it like that. But the idea of selflessness benefiting you on a mental and physical level is not new. You know, that's quite a real tangible thing. You know, when you meditate, your brain goes into a different state. You know, you can similar to sleep. You know, and things like that. Like, it can really change the way you physically are, and that can help you be healthier or happier or whatever it is. But that comes from this idea of wanting to help others, or in a simple way, you know, or whatever rules, you know, not lying, not stealing, not killing, you know, all of that kind of thing. You know, like you said about perhaps if, you know, the first murder is the hardest or whatever.
As we all know, yeah.
Like, that's because, and then, as we all know, apparently, I don't know. But, you know, but that idea that the opposite of that, you know, the nicer you are, the more you give, the more you try to be selfless, depending on how far you want to go in your life, you know, that could have an effect on everything, not just society. It's
a much slower way of building a utopia than, you know, instead of having a state and it seems like the onus is on every single individual to just buy into this thing, rather than, which feels a lot less pragmatic. But
yeah,
I've done those meditations before. Is it called meta? I think it's called, isn't it? Yeah. That's quite good, actually, because it builds empathy. Because I've been told, like, oh, you know, you're supposed to, like, send, you know, good wishes and stuff to people that you already like, but if you do it to people that you don't really like as well, it's also I've found it sort of beneficial. It's
cleansing, isn't it?
I mean, as I said before, like, you don't have to like everybody, but you can empathise with them and realise that, you know, if they've treated you badly, or if they are, you know, not perfect. None of us are perfect, obviously, but if they have a negative side that you're more knowledgeable of, or that you don't like for some reason, there's a reason for that. You can still kind of wish them well, really.
Yeah, it comes back to that idea. Again, this, you know, you can say something like, oh, you meditate and you do it for yourself. Well, that sounds really selfish. And then you say things like, you say something like, you know, the doctor with the patient that might be, you know, high on painkillers or whatever, doing ridiculous things, smacking them or whatever because they don't understand what's going on. The doctor would never get angry with the person per se. They would just finish what they need to do and leave them be, you know, and get them into a safe place or whatever. And I think that's also the same kind of mindset we need to have for other people. But then again, it sounds a little bit like you're putting yourself up on a pedestal, but I don't mean it like that. It's just this idea of having a mindset where you're like, I realize that you have no control over how you act because you're so engrossed in the world, the consumerism, the whatever it is. And you can go as far, like if you know, maybe that's my things, consumerism in the world and all of that. But maybe if you were a monk, the monk would be like, oh, you're so engulfed in your own life and having a body. And, you know, I don't know, like, you know, it would just go on forever, I suppose, you know, in those kind of stages of I would say tiers, if you will, of like how much you can let go of or whatever. But in the end, if you can get a mindset that does let go of things that other people are doing, that's always going to help you with your happiness levels or your contentment. You know, like I quite regularly try to get out and pick up the rubbish off my street and down the road a little bit. And there's always rubbish, but you could go out and be like super angry that people have like thrown their trash on the ground, or that the bin men are really crap at emptying the bins and it just blows everywhere.
If anyone from Leeds City Council's listening, then mainly they're good.
You know, I mean, like however you want to justify the annoyance, you could easily kind of go into a rolling angry tangent with the world for having litter all over the road or whatever. Or you could just pick it up and enjoy the sunshine and the breeze and the birds tweeting and not really mind how it got there. Just that now it's getting cleaned up, and that's all that matters. So in my mind, I kind of think that that's kind of the same idea with like any of the things that we try to do to better ourselves. It's like, yes, it might be better for society as well, but does it matter?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
I mean, I'm just probing, really. I don't really care what the answer is, but I did, but only because I just wondered what the parallels were between sort of like the Torah and all those commandments and these particular rules in yogis. But it doesn't have to, as I said, they didn't have to be mutually exclusive, and both those things can be good for you, but there can also be a reason why they are there as well. I guess I sort of thought that I don't know, it's a way that if you look at those rules and you're not religious, you can just look at it through like a cynical lens and say, well, that's the only reason that they're there. It's not because it's because someone's set a load of rules so that people think that they go to hell if they don't listen to them, and it's better for society that, you know, people aren't murdering and stuff. It was almost the tantamount of thinking that if you were to create a religion now, you'd be saying things like, "Oh, don't use single-use plastics," or or like pay your tax, or
"Thou shalt not use plastic."
You know, and in 1,000 years' time, you look back and say, "Oh, it's quite obvious why they enshrined in why, you know, God didn't really exist or care about plastic, but we were."
Yeah, but all of this, even all of the yamas and the niyamas and all of this, all ties back to that first one, that non-harming. Like you're saying, it might be for society, but it's also for yourself. You know, it takes, the more you hurt and harm and stuff, that's going to change. It's going to make, you know, people always say like, oh, you know, when you've been through bad experiences, you know, you get harder or whatever, you know, like ice heart or whatever, you know, things like that, because they just don't care, because they've been through so many bad things or horrible things have happened to them, and it changes them. I think that on a small level, every decision that we make does that. You know, every time that you do something that you think, probably shouldn't, but I'm kind of desperate, so, you know, I'll, you know, buy this pack of water or whatever in bottles, in plastic, or wrapped in plastic, you know. And every time we make a little decision that we know that we shouldn't be doing, it kind of changes you. It makes you a little bit more callous, maybe might be a word to use. Yeah. Grow calluses.
So that's how serial killers must feel, because when they've killed so many, it's just another day
calloused up.
Just easy.
That's not my area of expertise.
So the 10 commandments, like one of the commandments is not to steal, and the sutra, like, and the yama, like, is, you know, against stealing, right? So one of them's stolen from the other one, haven't they?
Which one came first?
Yeah, so we get that a lot in comedy, where like they may have come up with something independently, but there's no way of proving it. But sometimes you do kind of know that people have just had the same thought pattern. If there's a topical thing happening, then everyone makes the same joke on Twitter. That's that sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that Patanjali stole from Moses or anything, or vice versa, but it's ironic that that's a commandment.
They line up.
That looks like a good set of rules. We'll have those. And then I'll say don't steal in there just so that it throws people off the scent. I would never have done that. It's one of the sutras.
I mean, I suppose the thing is with a lot of these, like with the yamas and stuff, you have to sit down for yourself and decide for yourself how just contemplate it, just sit down and think about it. How do you want to apply it? I was saying about, stealing from yourself because you're not listening to your body. You sit down to see how you feel right now and have an expectation, and you're taking away from yourself. But also, if when we go back to in-person classes with other people, will we start comparing ourselves to others more and stuff like that? And then you're taking away from yourself because you think you should look like something else. There's loads of ways we can think about it.
It's not just don't rob a bank, is it? So, I don't do that either.
Yeah.
But.
Unless you're going down like the whole V for Vendetta thing, then it's up for debate. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we move? We finish?
I mean, I did think about asking if your family had guns.
Of course.
Yeah, I thought it might.
Yeah, loads. Yeah, my dad used to hunt as well when I was young. And he used to hunt with his dad and his brother and stuff. And then he had a handgun, I think. I think I've shot them maybe once or twice. And we had a BB gun when we were kids to play with. Which I think... Do you have BB guns over here, really? I don't...
Got potatoes, spud guns.
Do they shoot potatoes?
Yeah, you get it, and then you push it into a potato and like twist it about a bit. And then pull it out, and then it has got a little circle of potato in it, and then you can fire this little bit of potato at someone.
Oh, nice. And is it like spring oriented?
Yeah,
then?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Potato gun instead of a BB gun. That's probably so much safer.
Different world, isn't it, from over here?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a strong sense of like, there's a very strong sense of like being a patriot for your country, being very proud in being a citizen, an American, which I think anyone in Europe is going to know that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's like an I don't know, not an anti-government thing, but it's like it's like...
That's what I was getting at, yes. So we have a lot, there's a lot of American pride in that, but one of the biggest things is this idea of being able to take up arms against any people in power that are abusing their power. That will always be there. That will always be strongly ingrained into the hearts of everyone, I think. Sure, there was always going to be pockets of people who don't agree or whatever, but I think that in general, just guns in general in America are always going to... I'd be very surprised if that ever changed that feeling, But also, that's not to say that does not disagree or go against anything about gun control. People joke quite a lot. There's quite a few states where you hardly have to do anything to get a gun. Personally, I think that if you have to go through tests and training to be able to drive a car, then you should have to do that and maybe a little bit more to be able to buy a gun. That's just common sense, right? That's why there's so much hoo-ha about guns and stuff in the US, because some of them are really easy to get hold of them, some of them aren't. And people have really strong feelings like, oh, well, if you take all the guns away from the good people, the only people that have guns are bad people. And it's like, well, to some extent, that's true.
There's too many guns to take everybody's guns away now anyway.
Yeah, that would never... No one would ever do it. They wouldn't... You can't take... That wouldn't happen.
Because the mindset is just like... the argument is that what would be the first thing that a government would do to stop you rising up against them would be to take all of your weapons away.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's fine.
So if you already have that mindset, you're not going to just acquiesce and just say, oh yeah, well, here it is then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But, don't get me wrong. My dad had a locked gun case in the house, and it was locked, and his keys were on his key. My mom couldn't even get to it because he only had one set of keys for it. There was never this idea of like guns laying around.
It's just such an alien thing to people over here. I think they sort of feel like people owning one is a bad thing and bizarre. I'm not being pro-gun or anything, but I sort of, when I sort of see lots of people like guns, I sort of think, well, it can't just be a feeling powerful for shooting a gun, like as if every gun's a penis extension or something. It's got to be another. Why do they think?
Yeah, it's not like having a loud car and a big tires or anything.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think it does come more along the lines of like, I think there's this heritage idea of being able to defend yourself even against your own government if you needed to. There's a lot of history behind that in America that I think is lost here for good reason, obviously, because it's just not, you just wouldn't think about it.
Yeah, just curious, because it's no one in my family has a gun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I remember when I was working, the first time I started working in an office, and after a bit, I don't know however long, someone asked, because I'm American, and they said like, oh, they have a gun. Have you shot a gun? I was like, Yeah. Ooh. Why wouldn't I? And it was just like, what? And like, I would say nearly everyone that I worked with, 20 people or whatever that were dotting around or whatever, no one had even touched a gun. They'd never even held one or shot. And that was foreign to me. That was like, what?
You haven't lived.
You haven't shot a gun? I'm like, I did that when I was, we went, as soon as I could go to church camp at 14, we had riflery every year. Like, that was just one of the things that we did. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Just the culture you brought up does have an effect on you, doesn't it?
Definitely.
That's for sure. Thank you for listening. This episode was sponsored by the National Rifle Association of the US of just messing about. Although I'm sure they do loads of good work. I don't bloody know. Anyway, I hope that was alright for you. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Is it hack to ask an American person if they shot a gun? I think it probably is, isn't it? I'm embarrassed now. Anyway, don't forget to check us out on the socials, as the Ute say, I think. I sound older and older. But yeah, shares, telling your friends and stuff like that. We really love stuff like that because otherwise no one else finds out about it. It honestly really helps loads. So we're really grateful if any of that happens. Anyway, I've gone on a bit. Oh no. So that'll do. Bye.